Dr. Jazmin Rodriguez was born and raised in Mexico and grew up in an underserved community with limited access to healthcare, which sparked her interest in medicine. She finished medical school in Monterrey, Mexico, and then moved to the US to further her education. Dr. Rodriguez fell in love with the full spectrum of family medicine when she had the opportunity to volunteer with family medicine providers in the Rio Grande Valley region. She completed her maternal, child, and reproductive health fellowship at Memorial Medical Center and is currently faculty at Southern New Mexico Family Medicine Residency Program in Las Cruces. She enjoys cooking, hiking, and spending quality time with her friends and family. With that, Dr. Rodriguez, feel free to take it away.
Hello, I'm glad to be here. Let me just start over. I'm very excited to be invited to do this. I don't know how many people we have here today, but I hope they find this to be helpful. It was definitely helpful for me when I was putting together this presentation. So hello. I will be basing all this presentation on the ACGME Faculty Development Toolkit, and I will share at the end where you can find it. Almost absolutely everything was directly from there. They have a lot of resources that we can easily find and use. They have slides that you can use also for other presentations, but they have very useful resources. I'll share that at the end. I didn't put it in here, but I don't have any financial disclaimers or anything else to share in here. And the goals for this presentation will be to start shifting the definition of feedback, and that's where we will start, just defining it, and identifying characteristics of effective feedback, which at the end, that's what we all want. How to prepare to give that feedback, and to provide an overview on 2 feedback models. This we'll look at one of them in a little bit more depth, and the other one we will overview. And I will give resources for how to find them and where to get any more details regarding those 2 feedback models. We'll start with the definition, and I would love if people can participate, but these are the 2 definitions that the ACGME is sharing regarding feedback. The first one is, it was described in 2008, and it's specific information about the comparison between a trainee's observed performance and a standard, given with the intent to improve the trainee's performance. If we compare that to the one from 2015, which is a supportive conversation that clarifies the learner awareness of their developing competencies, enhances their self-efficacy for making progress, challenges them to set objectives for improvement, and facilitates their development of strategies to enable that improvement to occur. So how are those 2 different? If anybody can participate and tell us, do you see any difference besides the one being longer than the other? So the 2 of them are different, given that the second one, which is the newer one, is more learner-centered. And if we can read it again, it just clarifies the awareness. We start there. We start with them and what they can see as where they are at. And then it's a bidirectional collaborative conversation. It's not just I'm looking at you and I'm giving you all the examples on how you didn't meet the mark. It's more based on the learner and what they think is happening, what they can see already that is happening. It also empowers them to be able to express what they can identify that is not quite there, but also to being empowered and saying what things are going well. And it focuses on growth and improvement. And at the end, it's right there. It includes an action plan, right? What good is a feedback if you're not saying how we can improve the areas that are still not quite there yet? So this is a time for reflection. Can anybody think about a time when feedback went well? Why do you think it went well? How did it mitigate feedback barriers? And if you can identify exactly what the teacher or learner was doing to improve feedback, or if this was about learning culture. I can share one moment that I thought that my feedback was really well. It went really well. It was a time when one of my senior residents told me that she would like to discuss my notes with me, and that she could see. I told her that I understood that my notes, I was an intern, were very disorganized, but I didn't know how to make them better. So she sat down with me and she was very specific in the things that I was doing great and the things that could be better. She helped me put it all together and express an assessment and plan that was what I was trying to convey. I think both of the sides were ready for the change because I could identify at the moment that I wasn't doing great with my notes, but also she was able to help me with an action plan on how to improve it right then and there. The characteristics of effective feedback usually will fall into the three categories below. Something with the teacher that the teacher did was effective. Either they established a relationship, and this is way before we start talking about feedback. We established some goals, and this is very helpful at the beginning of rotations when we tell them, what is your goal for the week? What is it that you're working on? What do you want me to give you feedback on this week? Or what are you working on today? The feedback is specific. That is always helpful. If we just tell someone that they need to improve their notes, that is not very specific, and that might not really be helpful at all. The same when we tell them that their presentation should be better, or that they should read more. The feedback being specific really makes it more effective. Positive and corrective, non-judgmental. We don't tell them, oh, you're a bad resident because you're not doing this and that. We're trying to improve, focused on actions. We start with an ask. We ask them how things are going and what they think went well, and includes an action plan. It has a follow-up. Let's say if we tell the resident and they are identifying that the notes need to be improved because the assessment plan is not very specific, and then we can have a follow-up and say, let's get together this afternoon and work on that, and we'll see the improvement tomorrow. And also should include some examples. As I said in my own example, my senior resident sit down with me and she went almost line by line, giving me examples of what is it that I was trying to say and what is it that I was putting actually in the notes. Another characteristic of effective feedback, and this is more about the learner that will make it effective, is that the learner already has a growth mindset. They are wanting the feedback. They are wanting to improve on something. When they are looking for that feedback and they are requesting it, is way more effective than if we're trying to give feedback to somebody that's just not ready to hear it yet. If they on their own have set some goals and they can tell you, I am working this week on improving my interpersonal communication with the patients when I am explaining the plan, well, that's excellent goal that we can pay attention specifically to. When they're looking forward to feedback and they are receptive, they're open to it. Sometimes it's about the learning culture, what will enable that effective feedback. If we develop that longitudinal relationship and we get our whole culture to be focused on growth, when we make feedback the common denominator of almost every interaction, when we make it that everybody's used to giving and receiving feedback, that also takes away some of the prior mindset of, if I'm getting feedback is because I must be doing something wrong. So just making it common and being able to get everybody used to giving and receiving feedback just frequently. And we want to start by saying, let's toss the feedback sandwich. It has been really proven that it's not really that effective to say a good thing or a positive thing and then say the negative thing or the correctional feedback and then give another positive. Most of the time, the thing that you're really trying to convey, which is in the middle, gets lost in the positive and positive. Kind of like, you did great with that. you did great with that explanation that you gave to the patient. Your assessment plan really sucks, but it was a beautiful note, right? That just doesn't work as well. So what things do work for giving feedback? First of all, we have to set the stage, right? And they use the mnemonic preps. And before anything, you just have to prepare. Most of the work that we do has to be done up front. And that the main one here, and I can't stress it enough, is promoting that relationship with the person that you're giving the feedback to. In our case, it will be with the residents, right? And how do we do that? Maybe it's just simply by talking to them and being a normal person, being a human being and asking them how they're doing in a regular basis, not just when I want to come up and give them feedback. Getting to know them, know if they have family, if they have kids, if they are struggling with something specifically. Definitely being able to know what their family or home situation is before you give feedback will give you a better understanding of if there's any struggle, what the struggle may be. If you know that, I don't know, one of the residents is being up breastfeeding all night or the child is sick, maybe we'll be more aware of the things that are happening during the day, right? And maybe that's why the performance that wasn't as great as it would be. But if we don't promote those relationships even way before we start giving feedback, it'll be difficult for the resident to just come up to you and say, you know what, I was up all night. This is why I feel like things are not going that great. What else do we do up front? Before we start giving any feedback, really establishing those goals is important. Establishing SMART goals, right? Not just the goal of, sometimes when we ask the residents at the beginning of the week what their goal is for that week, they will say something very vague, like, I want to be more effective in my time management, right? Although that's a very good goal, that goal is not very specific and it doesn't give you any details on what they really want to achieve. So we try to guide them to give us a more specific goal and say, I would want to work on my time management by finishing my notes before 9 a.m. and being able to see all my patients before 8 so I can work on my assessment plan. Something more detailed. Sometimes they will tell me that they want to improve their communication skills with patients, but being able to tailor that to what they really mean so we can also know what we're trying to give them feedback on is helpful. So for example, for this specific resident, they want to improve their communication with the patient and they want to be able to use less medical jargon when they're explaining the assessment plan. So that's something specific that we can pay attention throughout the interactions and give them specific feedback from. And all this is done upfront, right? You do it before you're trying to give the actual feedback. Picking up the setting, some things are more adequate to give immediately, right? And you can't really wait. Let's say you are performing a procedure and you're performing a procedure with a resident that is having to be corrected in some instrument, how they're grabbing the instruments or how they're placing them. So that feedback has to be given more immediately, right? It definitely helps if you talk about it in prep before going to the procedure, but at the time you would have to do it at the moment. Sometimes it's better if you wait at the end of the day or at the end of the encounter, or it really depends. What else do we do? Is the S for that, signposted, right? Even though we give feedback all the time, when we tell them, in this case, I would do this for blah, we have to tell them that we're giving them feedback, right? Sometimes on the side of the faculty, we feel like we give feedback all the time, and they are, when you ask the residents, they're like, oh, I never get any feedback about anything. So sometimes just being able to say it and put a sign out there, let's give some feedback. Or, you know what, I just gave you some feedback. What did you think about that? It really does help. As I explained just right before, the most important step in this case really is promoting a relationship. And this can take just minutes, right? But ideally, you would do it longitudinally as you get to know the resident better. Promoting that relationship is what's going to open the door for them to be able to receive that feedback. And the whole point is just to getting to know them as a person. Some of the questions that we can ask the learners will be just easy questions, right? What's your name? Or how do you pronounce your name? Make sure that you're saying it correctly. It's just part of being respectful to their culture. That can open the communication line. What are your interests? What do you do for fun? What did you do over the last weekend, right? Sometimes the residents are like, they don't have any time to do anything else for fun. They only do residency at this point. But okay, so what are what's the service that you're coming from? What did you do last rotation? What are you doing next? Tell me what you learned in your PEDS rotation. Did you like it? Who did you rotate with? Some people, and it's more on the lines of what their personality is, and they do more fun questions as icebreakers. Just make sure that they're inclusive, right? What's your favorite thing to eat on a hot or cold day? What's your favorite food? What recent book did you read? That's not medicine, right? Or, any recent show that you watch or binge watch? What are you currently watching on Netflix? Or are you a sports fan, right? Did you watch the game last night? If you were able to travel anywhere, you had the time and the money, where would you go? Just trying to get to know them, but also opening the relationship and breaking the barrier between the faculty and the residents, so they feel like they're just talking to another person. So this is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I loved it, and I just took it directly from the toolkit. This if we're not meeting the basic needs, we are at the bottom of the pyramid, which are the physiological needs: food, water, warmth, rest. If we're not meeting security needs, safety needs, then we're not going to be able to meet the needs of learning, right? The self-actualization that's at the top of the pyramid. The basic needs, right? If we have a resident that has been up all night for 24 hours because, as I said earlier, their child was sick, they were not able to sleep at all. Do I think that they'll be able to get some be very eager to hear some feedback and how they are not paying attention to the orders? Well, they probably just needed to sleep, right? And they're not going to be all that excited about hearing how to improve on their assessment and plan, or they're not going to be very excited about, let's review this article right now. If they haven't eaten, right? Sometimes we just want to finish rounding and it's 2 p.m. and they haven't eaten lunch, but I just want to finish rounding because I still have 6 patients to see in the floor. Sometimes we just have to take a pause and make sure that we're meeting those needs, right? Nobody had to take a break to go to the bathroom today. That was awesome. No, that's probably because they're all dehydrated. We're all dehydrated because we're not making breaks to drink water, to just fill those basic needs. Also, security and safety, right? Those are also basic needs. If they don't have security at home, if they don't have safety in the hospital, if they feel that they are that there's a patient that's being aggressive towards them and they are unsafe, nobody can learn when those are the circumstances. Then right above that one is the feeling of belonging and love. I don't think we can do much for that, but we can ask them if they have friends that they talk to. The esteem needs, prestige, and feeling of accomplishment. This is where them having that fulfillment from their work comes in place. And sometimes that's difficult when they are just working so many hours per week and they don't feel like they have a lot of control. But still, having that feeling of fulfillment from our jobs, it improves well-being, and it improves the general sense and the readiness to learn. And then once we fill all those needs and all those needs are being fulfilled everywhere, then we can focus on learning. So it's just something to keep in mind. Now, for setting goals, right? And here in this little comic strip is saying, how are you doing on your unspoken objectives? And I was like, what? Well, I mean, if we don't tell them what the objectives or goals are, nobody's really going to know if they're improving or not improving. And I get from residents all the time, and during residency too, that nobody tells them anything, right? Even if it's you're doing great, you're doing the triages in L&D, and that's all that I want you to do at this point, or I want you to be able to finish and do on your own 2 vaginal deliveries this rotation. They just don't know, right? How can they work to improve something that they really don't know what they're supposed to be improving? And the goals is a bidirectional thing, right? We can tell them my goal for the week for the residents is to, I don't know, finish all the nodes before noon or finish rounding before 2 p.m. I don't know what the goals specific for your rotation and your circumstances are, but you can tell them your goals, you can ask them their goals, and we can work together to make sure that we're meeting those goals. They can be different depending on the rotation, the day, the encounter. They can be milestone based, and we can say, for this week, we're working on practice-based learning and improvement. So we're going to talk about it, and we're going to see how we can improve this every day. But at the end of the day, they do have to be SMART goals, so we can define them, be specifics. They can be timely, but also so we can see and measure it and see that we're actually working on that. Common questions to ask is, what do you hope to get out of this rotation? Or my goals for your week on FMS are blah. Or just simply, what are you working on? On the SMART goals, again, making sure that they're specific. As I said, you should read more. It's not at all specific, right? They should be measurable. I'll be able to finish all my notes before 9 a.m. That's measurable. Actionable, that they're that you can set the specific goal that somebody can see that is being done. Realistic, saying that I want to finish all that is to learn for OB in this week is absolutely not realistic, but we can say that I want to learn how to manage preeclampsia by the end of this week. Time-based, right? By the end of this week, or by the end of the day, or by the end of the rotation. About the setting, right? Consider the place, the timing, and your head and heart space. The place, it really has to be a private, quiet place. I have had residents complain about them getting feedback in the middle of the ICU, in the middle of the nurse station, right? When they were told that their management was wrong and that at least what they got from that feedback was that they were just doing it all wrong. They felt after that the nurses lost their trust in them as residents and being able to manage, and they had a lot of hard time getting their orders across when they were managing patients in the ICU. So that was probably not the best place to give feedback to a learner. More private setting, and it doesn't have to be a one-to-one, right? We can sit down with the team and just start talking about the feedback according to the goals that they set that day, but definitely being mindful of who is listening. If it's going to be a more sensitive feedback, then probably one-to-one would be the better setting. Quiet place, right? If we're, again, in the middle of the ICU or in the middle of the ER, where there are so many things going on at the same time, there's loud, everybody is, I don't know, maybe there's a patient yelling in the hallway. That's a lot of distractions that may be happening at the time. So that's probably not the best time. But once it's at the end of the day that you can sit down in the office or in the place that you guys gather together, that's probably a better time, a better place to give the feedback. Consider the timely versus delayed, and we talked about if it's a procedure, you probably need to do it right now, and it cannot be delayed. But maybe if it's a correction that they need to grab differently, but probably it will be a good idea to get together with the resident after you finish the procedure to see what they thought went well, what they thought about what you were saying, have a little debrief time and see what could be better for next time. The longer we wait, though, the more the chances that they're going to forget what we're talking about. So most of the time, closer to the time that the observation happened will be the best. And consider your heart and head space, right? Am I moody today, right? Am I in a good place to be giving feedback? Am I struggling with something and I'm frustrated with something else that I'm going to come and give the feedback in a way that is going to be probably not the best, and probably it wasn't my intention to do it that way, but I'm not in the right spot. So then considering all that, probably delaying it until you're in a better space, it's the best idea. Definitely it has to be done, and waiting forever is not the best idea, but just enough time to get you on the right headspace. And signposting it, right? You have to tell them, is it now an okay time to go over a little feedback? I want to give you some feedback, right? Let's use that word. Let's say feedback, or let's spend a couple of minutes on feedback. And as I said, sometimes we're just giving the feedback because that's what we do all the time, but we have to say it. We have to say, oh, okay, so what did you think about that feedback, right? Let's talk a little bit more on that. Okay, any questions so far? As I hear none, let's go to an overview of two feedback models. And there are plenty of models out there. ACGME is focusing on these two, though, the ADAPT model and the R2C2. So let's go through them. The ADAPT model. And I tried to make this a little bit more concise, but it was just a very long table. So ADAPT, it can be initiated by either the coach or the learner. And it all starts kind of like the same, right? Before the A for ask, we're going to prepare. We're going to develop that relationship. We're going to reflect on those learning goals, either from the learner or the learning goals that you have for them. You're going to talk about expectations. You're going to do all this prep work before you actually see and perform the observation. And then once we are done with that, we can ask. And there's a lot of asking here. It's just a dialogue back and forth, a lot of asking. You're going to see and you're going to reflect if the learner is ready for feedback. You're going to ask for their thoughts about the observation, right? And we do that all the time, right? What went well? How did you think that went? We can ask them exactly, because sometimes we ask, how did that go? And it's just very, very short, right? Oh, that went well, or it wasn't that great. More specifics, right? Asking what they thought that went specifically well. Most of the time they're very ready to give you an example of what didn't go well, and sometimes some people have a hard time saying specifically what did go well, but encouraging them to identify that's something that went well so they can build on it is important. Also, so they're not just catastrophizing, right? Everything went wrong. No, likely chances are that something went well. And then we ask them what they could have done different, right? If we were to do it again, what would you change, or what do you think didn't go as planned? What was difficult? Once they say what they're trying, what they thought it was difficult or what they thought could go better, that's our moment to build on it. And you can ask if there are any open observations. Is there something that you would like to for me to work or to give you feedback specifically on? As I said, the main thing here is going to be the ask for adapt. It is a dialogue, and we are supposed to listen, right? When we're asking, it's not just to check the box. What went well? Okay, moving on, right? No, we're supposed to listen what they actually thought went well and build on it. That also gives you an opportunity to learn if they have any insight, and so you can tailor your recommendations or your feedback to their perception. I believe Dr. Rachelson spoke already about learners that have difficulty receiving feedback and they are struggling, right? So how to adapt for that. They often identify areas of improvement, right? Except if a person lacks insight, they usually can identify, oh yeah, I wish it had been better when I was talking about goals of care. I wish I would have done a better job navigating the questions that the family had, right? They usually can identify it. But if not, you can ask them a specific question. How do you think that went? What are you trying to work on? What do you want feedback about? What didn't go as well as you hoped? Or what would you do differently next time? And for the second part of the adapt, the D is for discuss, the next A is ask again, and then plan together. So when we're asking them in the first ask, and they're saying what they think went well and what they thought didn't go as well, that's where we have the opportunity to discuss and build on it. Then you can tell them, right? Yes, I saw that you were talking to the patient, and I could observe that you had developed a really good rapport with the family members. That was great. Good job on that. Or when they tell you, right, that I was fumbling through the medical jargon and I couldn't quite figure it out, then you tell them, you build on that. You give them your observations. The following ask, and we ask again, and we just keep asking, right, if they understand, right, what you're saying or what they understand about the feedback that you're giving. And then plan together, right? At the end of the day, the plan really is for improvement. So what is it that we're going to do or work on to make it better, right? In the discussion portion, when we're telling them and building on what they told us, just make sure that we're giving some positives too, right? Because sometimes we're just very happy to jump on, yes, this could go better, but they are also trying to learn what they did well so they can continue doing it, right? If we're going to be corrective, we have to be really intentional about talking about the performance or the action, not the person. And also we have to be very specific and make sure that we're able to prioritize 2 or 3 points only. We cannot just give them a list of things that they have to change. You know what? Everything went wrong. You just have to do this and this and that and all this different. So basically just change everything. The last A, which is ask again, is where we ask for the understanding. You can ask them for opportunities for change and development that they can identify. Clarify what the feedback means for the learner, right? Like, was that something that they were aware of and they were already working on? Do they agree with that feedback that you just gave? Sometimes they don't, and that's another opportunity for discussion. What are your thoughts about that? Anything that struck with you as something to focus on, or just simply, does that make sense, right? You're giving the feedback on how to grab the instrument when you're doing the circumcision, and you finish your feedback and you think that is beautiful and it was perfect, right? And at the end of the day, you're telling them what they have to change and what they don't have to change, and they didn't get it, right? Does that make sense? No, not really. I don't understand what you're trying to tell me, right? Like, can you just say in a different way? It's important to see if they really got from you what you thought that you were saying. And at the end of this ADAPT model is the plan, right? Nothing really gets better without a plan for improvement. So telling them what they should improve on is very helpful, especially if it's specific. Helping them get there is the best part, though. So if I see that a person is really struggling with communication skills, right? And I just tell them that they have to work on it. Chances are they already knew that they had problems with communication skills, but how did they get better, right? Well, after talking to that resident, we figured out that there's a lot of language barrier, right? And some of the things they're not understanding exactly what we're asking or exactly what we're saying, or you know what, they're just very shy to speak in public, and when they're asked, they just blank. Maybe Toastmasters will be the best for them, right? Or maybe there's a course online that they can go in, their free time. That will be the best part of the feedback session, right? The actual actionable things that they can do to get there. What you can do to help them too, right? You should really improve your notes. Okay, so how, right? Like, tell me, how can I? What is it that you mean? And as I explained in my example way at the beginning, somebody took the time to sit down with me and explain to me what they meant about improving those notes, right? That is, it obviously does take time, but the extra time that they needed. That's the best way for them to improve it. And you don't have to solve all the problems, right? You can ask them, how will you work, or how may you work on X? Or here are some suggestions that have worked for me. For your study elective, I suggest that you go to AFP question bank or to the Q bank, because this worked for me, but they may have their own suggestions or their own ideas. We can also ask them, right? Who or what do you think might help you with this change? Sometimes they have people in mind, right? And it's a mentor, either formal or informal mentor that they feel more connected to, that they think that they can learn better from. It's always a good idea to ask them and try to get there. And also, what might get in the way? What do you think is not really helping you getting there? Okay, questions about the ADAPT model. No questions that I see. Okay, the second model is the R2C2. And quite honestly, this model is very similar to the ADAPT model. It starts the same, building a relationship, right? That's our R. Our first R, building a relationship, is always going to be the base of our feedback. The second R, and it's really a 2, explore reactions and reflections. Ask so you can see where the resident is, and you can see exactly where their insight is regarding that particular topic. See what they think already, see what they have been working on already. And I have the little QR code in there, so you can open and download, if you want, the trifold little handout that they I didn't want to put the whole thing in here. It's very helpful and it's very detailed. And then confirm content, right? That's the first C. That's where you say, yes, I think that went excellent. You did an excellent job explaining to that patient about the difference between those two medications or the side effects. So it's basically the same. It's just different wording, I think. And then at the end, coach for change and co-create an action plan. This is where it all builds together, and let's do some actionable steps. What's the next step forward? How can we get them there? And this, the same. It can be guided by you, or it can be what the resident already thinks that it's needed. It's very similar, but that's the second model that I wanted to talk about. And these are my references and my resources, and really is not, there are not a lot of references. I got everything from the ACGME Faculty Development Toolkit. It's very helpful, and I actually want to show you where I opened it. If you copy and paste that link to any browser, you can go to the ACGME, Learn at ACGME, to this faculty development toolkit. You can go through every single of these, but the ones that are used are going down all the way to the microlearnings, to this providing effective feedback 1 and 2. I didn't start touching on the approaches to challenging feedback situations because I feel like that's another whole hour just on that. But you can go to the video library too and find very useful videos regarding direct observations and how they did the feedback to those residents. I think they're really useful, and that can be that you can do on your own because they do take time. Any questions for me? I am done. That's about.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Rodriguez. If anyone does have a question, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or you can put it in the chat as well. I'll just give just a few minutes for that before we wrap up.
I feel like at the end of the day, it's just getting everybody used to getting and giving and receiving feedback, right? We've sat together with all the residents, and now they're more looking forward to feedback and asking for it. But also getting them to give feedback, right? The seniors giving feedback to the interns. They are the ones that work the closest with them and can see the improvement. Sometimes when we have two faculty members and one is doing the peer mentoring, just getting feedback in front of the residents is helpful too, so they see that we also get feedback, right? You know what, I'm working on finding those teaching moments during rounds, and it just keeps us accountable, right? And see that it's not just because we're getting after them or anything, but it's something that we should all be working towards too.
Dr. Rodriguez, I wanted to ask, do you ever take into account with the residents their preferred type of feedback? So whether they say, you know what, I prefer having written feedback, or I prefer like you giving me the feedback verbally. Does that ever come into account?
So not usually, but if you see that a person is having some or seems very defensive when you're giving the feedback, I think that's something to keep in mind, that you can ask them, right? What are the barriers to them receiving it? And sometimes people do say, right, some of the things is I really don't like getting feedback in front of everybody. Or when you sit me in front of you to give me feedback, it makes me feel like I'm going to the principal's office. Can we do it some other way? And that way we can start exploring and see maybe they do better with an email, or maybe, yes, exploring other options. I do think that it's better if we give certain specific feedback to follow up with an email, but that's just something that keeps us all accountable anyways. But yeah, especially when there's some barriers that you can see that there are some barriers that you have tried one way, another way, and this doesn't seem to be working, asking for preferred ways to get feedback is good. At the end of the day, the more they see it and the more they get it and the more they give it, the more we all get used to it and we don't have that strong reaction. I can definitely say that from the beginning of the intern year for me, when they would tell me, we're ready to give you feedback, I would have a kind of panic attack there and definitely didn't want it. Later on, little by little, I was like, well, I mean, yes, please do tell me what I'm not doing that great, right? So I can improve. So it's a matter of getting used to it. So the more we do it, the better and the easier it gets for everybody to give and to receive it.
And another question I had, sorry,
Yes.
Another question I had was just in terms of you mentioned kind of the cultural awareness. So how do you teach the residents, you know, that are then going to offer feedback to others? How do you teach them to kind of be mindful of that cultural awareness?
So most of it that we do in residency is model behavior, right? If they see the attendings give feedback to each other, and sometimes that's challenging and a little bit scary, right? Because we're putting ourselves out there and we feel vulnerable. But it's part of the same of being able to give and receive feedback is, you know what, I'm working on blah. Can you tell me how I did? Can you pay attention to that? The more they see it, the more they learn that it's okay. And then we get to, we've done in the office for the residents, just a round kind of table. And it's like, let's give feedback from the seniors to the interns, and we help and we jump in. And then we give feedback on the giving feedback, and it's just feedback all around. But it helps build those skills that are necessary to give feedback. And also they don't feel that uncomfortable giving and receiving it.
Thank you.
Any other questions at this time? If not, Dr. Rodriguez, thank you so much. I really appreciate your great presentation and also sharing those resources as well. I'll go ahead and close out. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, and hopefully we'll see you all next month.
Such a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, Mario. Thank you, Amanda. Bye.
Bye, everybody.